Welcome everyone to the August Focus series. So we're really excited to share a new feature with you today in Target Map Preferences. And I'm really excited about this one for two reasons. One, it's something that a lot of you have been asking for quite some time. So I'm excited to share that with you, but also because it's a feature that really amplifies your value proposition. So I want to start just by talking about when you create target maps in Asset Map, you'll know that you can create target maps for different events that could take place. For example, in the event of a loss of life, or if you're looking at disability or income protection needs, you can create a target map for that. Or long-term care, if someone becomes ill, you can create target maps for education needs, whether that's university costs or schooling costs, and of course for retirement. And you can also do custom target maps, but today I'm going to focus on these 5. When you create a target map, you'll know that the what you want section automatically populates based on certain default settings that have been added. So for example, in the event of death, the default setting is to look at how do we replace income in the event of someone's death for a period of time. Do we cover debts? Do we have some funding for final expenses? So those needs populate automatically. Now, up until now, you've had the ability to customize those needs to a certain extent, but now you have even more flexibility where you can put in your own what you want section for each of these different target maps. So you can define the wording that's used. You can define the amount or percentage. You can define start and end ages, as well as what that inflation or escalation is for that particular kind. So as we work through it today, I'm going to talk through some of the things to think about when setting up your target map preferences. And it might feel like, wow, this is a lot that I have to do. But remember, you do it one time, you set up your preferences, and then from there onwards, every time you create a target map, it'll automatically have those needs in for the what you want section, depending on the target map. You also don't have to do all of them at once. If you use the retirement target map mostly, start there, create your preferences for that, and then you can, after that, look at in the event of death or disability. But let's talk about some of firstly, the why. So why would you go and set up your target map preferences? Well, I think the obvious first answer is that it saves time. Once you've set it up, every time you create a target map from that point onwards, you don't have to change all the wording each time if you're updating the same thing every time. By building that into your target map preferences one time, you can save that time going forward. But even more than that, it gives you the ability to incorporate your house view. What are the conversations that you want to surface with clients when it comes to retirement? Or what is your house view in the event of death? What should we be thinking about? Is it, covering debts or IHT or certain expenses? You can now build that in and bring your house view to life across these different target maps. So not only saving you time, but also incorporating your house view and opening up the conversations you want to surface. So let's talk about some of the things to think about when it comes to the different target maps. If we think about retirement planning, you'll know that currently the default settings for that is we look at living expenses and travel expenses, and we default that to 60% of the client's current income for living expenses and 10% for travel. And we also put in the start and end ages. The reason we split these line items up is you may not be traveling till 100. You might only want to, account for that till age 80. But on the living expenses, you may want to extend that to age 100. Now you can really specify that. So I know a lot of you think about retirement in terms of, or have a house view that's slightly different. It might be that you think about it in terms of the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, so then you can build that house view into your retirement target map where you can have the go-go years from age, say, 67 until age 80, and then the slow go from 80 to 90, and maybe the no-go from 90 to 10, and have different amounts or income percentages that you want to specify for each of those. You can also bring in something like later life care, as something to open or surface in that conversation. So now you can build that house view directly into the retirement plan. Perhaps you think about retirement in terms of essential and luxury needs. You know, I see this often where the kind of first ones to say, what are our essential needs in retirement? Let's secure that first and then bring in the luxury needs for a period of time. You can now build that in to your retirement target map as your default. Or if you follow the retirement living standards, you'll know that, you know, they publish sort of a minimum lifestyle requirement for retirement, a moderate lifestyle requirement for retirement, and a comfortable lifestyle. This is also a great way of building that in. So you have those 3 line items, and then you simply select for a client. Let's see if we can secure the minimum one. What if we, you know, up that to moderate? What's the impact? Or if we go to that comfortable level, what is the impact then? So you can see how by setting up these target map reference ones, you can surface and bring this house view to life in every conversation with your clients. If we, in addition to that, we could also bring in additional line items. You're now no longer restricted to just the 3. So you could say, you know, I want a line item to talk about legacy. I want to talk to the clients about leaving a legacy, and you know, how much do we want to account for that, and who is that going to? And I want to bring that into retirement planning. The one I really love is this retirement celebration, you know, something to say we want to sort of highlight that point in time. We've made it, you know, this is the, you know, the celebration of that, and how do we account for that? So these are additional things you can bring into this conversation to really surface it in retirement. If we then think of in the event of death, now remember in when we're planning in the event of death, or even for income protection, we're looking at if something were to happen now. And what's important here to think about is what is that protection period? So in the event of death, we're looking at, you know, this individual would have earned an income, the family is dependent on that income. How do I protect from now until the client would have retired? Or maybe I want to look at whole of life for the client, but now we can put in what is the income that we would need to replace that the family can sustain their lifestyle in the event of one of the members' death. We may also want to cover debts in the event of loss of life. You know, what is that debt amount, and having funding for final expenses. So key things to think about when determining your loss of life preferences is, you know, what is that protection period that you want to look at? Is it from now until retirement, the period that the client would have been earning an income? Is it for a different period in time? Is it just for 10 years or 5 years? What about additional expenses like IHT? Do I want to create a line item for that to just open up that conversation that there might be costs involved or tax involved, or other estate costs? You can also think about a transitional period. You know, in the event of death, maybe there's 2-3 years where we want some extra funding as a buffer to ensure that the family can, you know, go through that process without having to worry about that. We can now bring that in and surface and open up those conversations. Same if we think about disability or income protection. Again, if there's something, you know, were to happen today and we wanted to protect the client's income, then we need to think about, we always look at it from today. And again, you want to think about what is that period? Is it from now until the client would have retired? You know, those are the years that they would be earning. If the client's 54 now, it's from now till 67. How do we protect that earning ability in the event of something going wrong? But in addition to that, you'll see that our default is to have an additional line item for retirement, because even if something were to happen now and we protected the income, we also need to remember that client is still going to retire, and we want to make sure that they're planning for that and saving towards that. So those are the 2 line items here. But the considerations to think about when you put in your preferences is, what is that period I want to protect? How does that relate to retirement? And how am I bringing that conversation in and surfacing that with clients? And then the last one being education. You know, here we default education expenses for the period of when the client, the minor child is from 18 to 22. So really looking at that university cost. But of course, you could bring it in from earlier. So you could say we want to plan for education from when the child is 5 or when the child is 12. You can set that up. You can also set up what inflation or cost of living adjustment we use. You know, typically education is going to go up a bit more than normal inflation. You can now bring those assumptions in. All right. So now that we've spoken about some of the things to consider when setting up your preferences, let's take a look at how you would do it. So I'm going to just share asset map. So when you log into Asset Map, so there we go. Okay, you'll first select your photo or initials in this top right-hand corner, and you'll go ahead and select Target Map Preferences. Here is where you define what do you want your what you want sections to look like for each of these different target maps. But starting with the general settings, here you can set up things like the expected net return on capital. So that would be your starting point, your default return assumption. Of course, once you create a target map for a client, you can edit that and make it more or less depending on the client's needs. But what do you want your starting point to be? That is what you would add in here. How this expected net return is used, for the retirement and savings goals, that net return is used in terms of the assets that are allocated towards that goal. They will grow at whatever expected net return you've got in that target map. And in the event of death or disability, we always assume it happens today, and we're trying to calculate how much cover or assets do I need to sort of allocate to providing an income for the family in the event of death or for covering debt. And we assume that total life cover required or total assets required will grow by this expected net return. So that's how it's used in the event of death or disability. So think about, what do you want your default or starting point to be? If you're changing it every time, this is where you want to put it in so that you can, start there each time. Annual increase of contributions. This is typically the inflation rate that you want to use. If you want to use 2%, 3%, this is where you could add that in. This will also be used to calculate if there's a shortfall, and let's say the client needs to save up that shortfall over time. What inflation do we want to assume that they will increase those contributions by? That's where this figure will come in. Default retirement age, you may want to start it at 67 or 60. Of course, you can change it for the client, but here is where you can set your default. What is our starting point and what is our mortality age? You can also specify which tab target maps open up on. So as soon as you open up a target map, you can decide, I want it to open up on the what it means tab, or I want it to open up with what you want because I want to talk the client through, this is what we said you want, this is what you have and what it means. Or maybe you want to go straight into that what it means tab, then you can set it here. And then going forward, every time you open one, it'll open on the tab you've selected here. All right, now let's take a look at the fun customizable fields. So if I go across to loss of life, you'll see here all the line items that I can select to include in my loss of life what you want target map. But now I can put in the wording. So income replacement, it would have said lost member income replacement. I can decide what wording we put in there, whether that is sustaining the lifestyle or income required or income in the event of death, whatever words you prefer. You can also select the percentage. So do I default it to 70% or 100% of what the client is currently earning? And you can put in the default stop age. So that's that thinking about the period we're protecting for. Do I want to protect in death until the client would have retired or a later age? And by how much must that increase? So what inflation do I want to assume there? In addition to that, you'll see that you could put in a line item for transitional income replacement. So that could be for a 3-year period or, some sort of period where we say we actually want a bit more in the first few years, just so that the client can focus on that and not have to worry. Then I can add that in. I can choose a percentage. I can choose how many years we want that for and whether that needs to increase by a specific inflation. Do we want to cover debt for the household, 100% of all debt? And then, of course, you can add additional items for final expenses. This could be expenses and taxes. If you wanted, you could put the amount at 0 to start off with, so you can have that conversation with the clients and then put in the amount, or you could specify a starting point. Same with emergency reserves or legacy. If you want to open up a conversation around having emergency reserves in the event of death or leaving a legacy, you can go ahead and put that in here and specify the percentages. But now you can also add custom ones in the event of death. So if there isn't a line item there for what you want to add in, you can go ahead and select custom. You can put in whatever words you want to use, and you can select whether it's a percentage of income or a specific amount and put in the amount that you want to include there. So again, giving you that flexibility and freedom to add in whatever you think is important to surface in the event of death with clients. If I go across to disability, here we have these 2 line items. Again, you can specify the wording you want to use, whether that's replacing income or thinking about retirement, or maybe there's another cost or associated need that you want to add in here. You can also specify, again, the percentage that it uses and the until disabled member's age. So you can again select that period. Am I doing it for a specific period in time or till age, say 67, as well as the inflation? Long-term care, this is something that is a growing need, thinking about if there's an illness, what are the costs that are going to be associated with that? What is going to be covered by benefits or versus out of pocket? This gives us the ability to plan for that. So here I can specify, an annual amount. Maybe, we say if there's an illness, we need a certain amount for the first 5 years or a certain amount for the first 3 years, and how much that would increase by. So I can go ahead and put that in, but I can also bring in other points for conversation. Would we require some sort of modification of the home? What about caregivers? What sort of costs would apply to that? Do I want to bring that into the conversation? So we see this conversation growing quite a bit in the UK, just around if there's an illness, what are the costs associated with that? And how do I bring that into the planning, or at least surface that conversation to say, this is the plan that we're going to put in place. So again, I can modify any of the words here to be exactly what you want to talk to clients about in the event of that. Same with education. I could specify university fees or school fees or whichever wording I prefer. I can put in the annual amount that I want as the default. Of course, I can change it for the client. What escalation I want to assume, what start age and what end age. So that could be from age 5 or 18 or 17, whatever you prefer. And then I think, the one that I think is used the most is on the retirement side. So here, this is really exciting that you can put in the descriptions you want to display, whether that is the go-go years, the no-go years, and the slow-go years, or whether you want to look at essential expenses and then look at travel and then look at luxury. You can really define using the 3 lines that are here, using the percentages that you want as your starting points. You can also define the start ages, the end ages, and the inflation escalation. But you don't have to use the 3 at the top here. You can select those or choose custom ones where you can put in exactly what you want this client's needs to be in the event of retirement, or for all clients. So you can specify the wording, specify whether it's amount or percentage, what that amount or percentage is, when you want it to start and when you want it to end, and again, what inflation you want to assume. So I think this is really key to bringing your house view to life, to actually build that in here, either using the line items that are here or the custom ones. And then maybe the one that I'm really like a bonus feature that I'm super excited about is, you'll know when you create a target map, often puts it or put in brackets next to each line item, 60% of spouse, primary and spouse income, or 10% of primary and spouse income. You can now, under general settings, use the slider to say, I want to include those brackets, or if you are taking them out every time with every conversation, you can go ahead and turn the slider off and those brackets will no longer show. All right. All right, I'm going to just stop sharing. If there's any questions, please let us know. I'm going to jump across to close off today. So there we go. All right, so in closing, to create your own target map preferences, remember you log in, select your photo initials in the top right and go to target map preferences. You don't have to do all of them today. You can, whenever you're ready, but maybe select one first. Think about, what is the conversation I want to surface for, say, retirement or in the event of death? What is the wordings that I'm always changing? What start ages do I want to think about? Is it from 60, from 67? How long do I want it to run for? What inflations do I want to bring in? And build your one target map preference and see, as you apply that to clients, how that saves time, allows you to surface the conversations you want, and of course, incorporates your house view into that conversation. If you want to work with us to do it together, please just let us know. It's a once-off setup, so you do it once and then it's there, and we'd love to work on that with you. And please share your feedback. You know, the more we use it and the more feedback we get, this is the first iteration, but obviously we want to build on that. Thank you everyone for joining today.